Once I define what I want this to look like, I'll go ahead and save this dashboard. Let's give it a name such as D3 in use currently. We'll call this dashboard 3. All right, so now I build a dashboard. How would I utilize this within SharePoint? How would I display this? What I can do from here is I can say that I want to create a new page. So let's go to Site Action, Create, and I'll create a new web part page. And I'm real inventive, and I'll just call this New Page. And then you choose what kind of a layout you want for the various zones within this SharePoint page. Once I've created the page, I now have the option to add a web part. So from here, I choose what I'm interested in is the Insight Viewer. I don't want to design web new pages here. I want to be able to view a page, so I'll choose that. Once I've got my viewer, I can open up the Properties panel, and now from here I can do things like saying, well, what's the appearance of this? Well, I want this to be maybe 600 pixels high. But one of the web parts that from within our design, from within our dashboard that we created, what do I want to actually put up here? Well, what's nice is when I select components, going out to the dashboard system, it's getting a current list of all of the dashboards that have been created. Within each dashboard, what are all the tabs that have been created? And within, so we see things like, here's my dashboard 3, here are the 2 tabs that I created. Within a given tab, here are the 2 components that I created, and I can choose. I can say I want the whole dashboard. We'll call this D3. And now when I close this and go out of exit edit mode, we'll see that within this page I just created, I now have access to the full dashboard. Within this dashboard, here's the revenue components that I designed. If I want to allow a user to drill down into this, so I want to look at the revenue detail. I want to see it broken down by country. I want to look at my top 4 countries as a stacked bar chart. All this kind of capability is available when to the end user as they're viewing this page. So now I can see the components within the revenue of my top 4 countries in each time period. And I could drill down into any one of these components similarly. If I go to the details table that I set up, well, here I see the revenue total, as well as the revenue broken down per employee. I see it per month. If I look inside a month, I see it by country, and within a country, I see it by city. And within a city, I could bring up details of all the individual transactions that made up that aggregate statistic. So we've seen one way I could use this, but if I go back to Site Actions and choose to edit this page, another way to use this would be in my configuration, instead of saying that I wanted to include in this SharePoint page the entire dashboard, I could choose just an individual tab, which would leave out the menu and just give me the one tab, or I could even go and choose an individual component. And now what we'll see is that when I go back out of the edit mode and take a look at this, rather than having the whole dashboard, my SharePoint page now has the one component selected from that dashboard. So what's cool about this, and what's nice about it is, someone may have laid out a dashboard that includes multiple pages and various things on each page. But here's a page that I built previously on a nearly identical dashboard. And from here what I can do is I can take the multiple components off of various pages, change the sizes, change the layout, put all 3 of these on one page. In other words, there's a very nice model for reuse where within SharePoint, someone can pick and choose any components and how they want to use them from across the pages. And overall, what I've tried to show in the demonstration today is that in under an hour, we were able to go from raw data to aggregate data to calculated metrics and the dashboard and do it all with 0 coding. And yes, you see lots of demos, but I want to stress that the process that I went through to build this is identical to the process we go through in implementation. And we're willing to prove this, and we've gone out to customer sites, or in this case prospect sites, many times, and we'll say, all right, show us your data, tell us what metrics you want and what dashboard you want, and we go through a very similar process. And it's not unusual. For instance, last week I did one where within a half an hour, we had the product installed, we had the first metric defined, the first dashboard components created. So it's a radically faster way of doing it than alternate approaches. We're not saying this makes data warehouses obsolete. No, there are certain types of statistical analyses or ad hoc queries. We need to bring all the data together into a data warehouse. But for a large class of problems regarding dashboards and reporting where you can define the information you want, we believe we have a more efficient, easier way to move just the minimum amount of data, provide an easy framework to define that, and give you a scalable platform to then build reports and displays off of that. So Kevin, that's what I want to show right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. So I think with that, we'll open it up to questions. Basically, there are two ways for people to ask questions. The first is to just type your question into the question box that you see on the right-hand side GoToMeeting interface of your screen. The other way is to raise your hand, and if you do raise your hand, then what I can do is unmute you, and you can ask any question that you see fit. So with that, we'll give people a couple seconds to ask questions. And it looks like here we actually do have a couple questions that have come in the course of the webinar, so let's hit those directly. Let's see, the first question here, Richard, it looks like I'm going to give this one over to you. If you have an existing SQL query or queries, can you use these to create reports?
Yes, you certainly can. When I was showing the event mapping and the auto-generated SQL, I clicked on a box that allowed you to use custom queries. If someone had their own custom query or stored procedure, they could cut it and paste it into that box there and then use their query instead of our query.
Okay. And then it looks like we've got one more question here so far. This one, again, Richard, I'm going to give this one to you. I'm concerned about query load on my operational databases, but I'd like to deliver real-time or near real-time operational dashboards. How does your architecture approach this, and will this work with SharePoint integration?
Well, we've already seen that it works with SharePoint integration as far as the ability to display the data, and the real-time update will display just fine through SharePoint. But the real issue here is what do we do to make it such that we keep the data load low on your source systems in order to allow this? And we do many things along these lines. So this includes that we only do incremental updates, so that we're not going to be saying, give me a copy of all your data. We're going to say, give me just the new transactions since last time I checked. So when you're thinking the volume of data to be dealt with, if you do daily updates, the question is, how many new transactions are there per day? If you're doing updates more frequently, well then figure how many transactions per that period. So one thing we do is small incremental batches. Also what we do is we keep the query that we send to those source systems very simple. We don't embed a lot of logic and derivations in the SQL that we send to those source systems. We typically keep it very clean and just do the basic query to get the data we need, and then we do any data transformation in our server in memory. We do joins between multiple systems in our server in memory. So we keep the load on these back-end systems very light, and what we found is the combination of these techniques tends to mean that we put less stress on these back-end systems than a traditional ETL approach. And specifically for real-time data, so that means that you might be querying the data more frequently. You might be querying it every 5 minutes instead of every hour or day, but of course then you're only getting 5 minutes worth of new transactions at that point, so it's a very light query. And the other piece of that is that, yes, we can take real-time data, or maybe we'll call it near real-time data from databases in this fashion, but we can also take real-time data from a message bus. So if you've got TIBCO or BizTalk or web methods and real-time messages flowing across an event system or a bus, we're designed to take those also. And also including that list would be various web service calls that can deliver data, and we can take that in real time. We were designed from the start as a real-time system to handle real-time information as well as longer-term historical data.